Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services, Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, and Gettles High Desert Mechanical. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Coconino High School girls basketball coach Cassie Schrader. She joins the show to break down the start of the season, how she feels about the talent within the region, and speak about the team's matchup with 2A Sedona. We'll then be joined by Chino Valley High School girls soccer coach Alan Foster. He'll speak about the team capturing a 2A state title this season, discuss his plans for the offseason, and the program's rivalry with Northland Prep Academy. And when we return from break, we'll be joined by Prescott High School football coach Cody Collett to talk about the program's first home playoff game since 1993, the solid class of returning seniors, and what the plan is for the offseason. All of that and a whole lot more coming up on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Prescott High School football coach Cody Collett. Coach Collett, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Philip. I always enjoy being on here.
Well, we're happy to have you, Coach. First and foremost, congratulations on finishing the 2021 season. I know it was a bit of a wild season for you, but the Badgers finished a 7-3 overall record, earning the number 8 seed in the playoffs. You know, your first round matchup came with a lot of storylines to it, considering, you know, you guys were the number 8 seed. You were facing off against the number 9 seed Bradshaw Mountain. 2 weeks prior to that playoff matchup, the Bears and the Badgers faced off in a region title game. So, Coach, I mean, going into that second matchup with Bradshaw in the playoffs, you know, what adjustments did you make, and how did it feel getting an opportunity to see Coach Bob Young and the Bears again?
We were excited about the opportunity. It's always fun to play Coach Young's team. They always play very hard. They're always extremely well coached. They did a very good job in that first matchup with us. Defensively, they had a real good scheme for some things that we like to do. They were able to pop some runs as well. They really coached a phenomenal game in that opening one. We felt like we needed to make some formational changes. You're not going to come up with a whole bunch of new plays. You got to change. I always like the term change the presentation, not the play. So we wanted to do a little bit more change in the presentation in terms of formationally to give us a numbers advantage and things like that. And also knew it was going to be essential that we were going to get some easy completions in the passing game because a really, really difficult team to run the ball on consistently. Michael Kelly and the rest of that front 6, front 8, and their 3-3 are very, very tough defensively. So we felt like that was going to be critical. Jackson did a really good job completing some of those high percentage throws and got us going a little bit. Had a little bit of the turnover bug in that one, or I think we could have maybe scored a few more, but it was a very exciting game and definitely it was a great victory, probably one of the more gratifying ones of my head coaching career.
Yeah, and it must have felt good, Coach. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, 2 weeks prior, Bradshaw comes to Prescott, wins the region on the field, on Bill Shepherd's field, and you know, you guys get another opportunity to face them in the playoffs, and you very much so get your revenge. I like that. Change the presentation, not the play. That's definitely something that you guys showed in the Mingus game in the second time against Bradshaw. I mean, there were so many scheme changes considering, you didn't have your starting quarterback throughout the playoffs. Alex Vaughn was knocked out in that regular season matchup against Bradshaw. So you were rolling with Jackson Rice for basically the remainder of the season. And we'll talk a little bit about his fit in the offense. But, I thought, like you said, he did a great job of really establishing the offense and giving you guys opportunities, because you're right. That Bradshaw team was very, very hard to run against. And you guys airing the ball out had a lot of success. So moving on from that, you guys beat the Bears. You get your revenge. You face the number 1 seed Poston Butte. Can we talk a little bit about that game?
Poston Butte's a great school, great team. I was the head coach there in 2016, and when I left, you knew with the growing area out there, they were going to be a football power. It was only a matter of time. And Coach Thompson was the head coach there, was my defensive coordinator. Coach Holmes is one of my best friends. Both those guys are really good friends of mine. I was in Coach Holmes's wedding. He coached with me at Dobson when I was the offensive coordinator there many years ago. He was like my right-hand man. So was excited about playing them. We knew how talented they were. We knew how fast they were, and we knew they were very, very good up front. I don't think we quite knew they were that good up front. I think, honestly, their left tackle, I don't know how he doesn't have any offers yet. He's a junior. All of 6'5", 315 with no gut whatsoever. And he's one of the best high school offensive linemen I've seen on film in a while. And he's gonna garner some Power 5 offers here shortly, I would think. Also, from what I gather from their coaches, a high GPA kid. They had a number of really good backs. Their quarterback played well. Defensively, they're really, really tough against the run. They'll give up some things in the passing game. But obviously, we were trying to do some things in the passing game. The other thing they were able to do that was a really good coaching move by them. Previously, they had Amari Gilmore, who's he's a D1 safety corner for them, going to Idaho. He had played corner and kind of locked up some of those teams' better receivers. He played safety against us because we're a little more efficient running the ball, and we just couldn't account for him. He was usually, if you're getting everybody blocked but the safety, you're okay. But that guy was making tackles at the line of scrimmage at safety. So he was
like Trey Polamalu almost.
Absolutely. I mean, he's going to do some great things at Idaho. Really, really talented player.
Coach, coming into the playoffs, you guys were the number 8 seed. Do you feel a little bit more pressure when you're in sort of the 8 and 9 spot, as that, while it is somewhat towards the middle-ish bottom of the bracket, you kind of set yourself up with the number 1 seed potentially into the following round? So I might be fishing for a question here, but I'm just curious, how do you kind of approach being that middle seed, considering that if you get past the number 9 seed, the next competition coming up is more than likely going to be the top seed? Do you make any where's your thought process kind of on that?
Our thought process is anywhere to get in the top 8. We hadn't played a home playoff game since '93. So whether it was 8 or whoever, you're going to have to play the top team eventually. So might as well play them early. And Poston Butte is definitely, I think they got a great shot to win it. I didn't have any problem with the draw. I thought it was a really good draw for us. We scrimmage Poston Butte every year. And so we welcome that competition. We don't ever talk specifically about winning in our program or winning a championship or winning a state championship. We talk about being the best we're capable of becoming. And I've always felt like, since I've been at Prescott, the best we're capable of becoming is a team that can go deep into the playoffs. We don't talk about that. We talk about the best we're capable of becoming. And at the high school level, if that's what you're doing, what is the best you're capable of becoming is going to change year to year. If you're not one of the, destination schools in the Valley that are going to have, 15 D1 kids every year, your definition of what's the best you're capable of becoming is going to change. And that's blatantly stolen from Coach Wooden, who I think is one of the, the greatest coaches of all time at any sport. And some things, people talk about Vince Lombardi a lot. Even Vince Lombardi later in his life said that whole winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. He said later in life he regretted saying that. And that's why I've always been very into Coach Wooden and that philosophy of being the best you're capable of becoming, because the best you can do is all you can do. And that's what we try to do every day in our program.
It's funny you bring up Coach Wooden. I remember my high school basketball coach, Aaron Wiltrout, would always push the John Wooden the pyramid of success.
If you haven't read the book, it's phenomenal.
I honestly will have to check it out. I really do like Coach Wooden. Of course, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Coach John Wooden, longtime men's basketball coach for UCLA back. I think it was the 50s through the 70s through their high.
Got an 88-game win streak, won 10 national championships, and even more so than that, one of my favorite John Wooden stories. He lived to, I believe, 98 or 99. His wife Nellie, who he was married to for years and years and years, passed away in her 70s, and he wrote his wife a love letter every month till he died. And that's awesome. If you can live your life like he did, I think you're doing something right.
I agree. Coach, getting back to the team here, you graduated a solid class of seniors this year. It's headlined by return specialist Servando Vega, who had a phenomenal year as your return man, along with Patrick Willoughby, Desmond Bennett, just to name a few guys who are key contributors for that senior class. Just briefly, what can you say about that collection of guys? Because I know you're returning a huge class next season. We'll talk about that in just a little bit.
I talked to this about our team, and I don't think I've ever been more proud of an individual class of kids. And this is the reason why, and I'll tell you, and I was really excited just because of them enjoying the process. I read the other day that everybody wants to be part of the outcome. They don't want to be part of the process, but the process is how you know who deserves to be part of the outcome. Little backstory on those guys. They, as freshmen, went 0-8. They lost every single game by an average score of 42-8.
Wow.
And those guys worked their tail off in the process every single day, getting better and better and better and better and better. And by the end, we only had 10 of them left. And obviously we had a really good class behind them, but they bought into working every day to get better. And that's why I'm so proud of them. And if you would have told a lot of people, hey, this group is going to be in the state quarterfinals as seniors, I think they would have said, about that. But just really, really proud of their effort and everything they did to improve, and proud of our program as well, because we really focus on that. And that's something that's really exciting, and great group of kids that, they asked Joe Paterno once what was his best team ever. And he always said, well, I don't know. I'll tell you in 10, 20 years when I see what kind of husbands and fathers there's going to be. And there's going to be some outstanding husbands and fathers and community leaders in that group. No question.
Well, Coach, you do return a phenomenal junior class going into the next senior year. Alex Vaughn, leading quarterback, of course, he's back next season. Cody Leopold, who has been your lead back among a few other guys, he'll be back next year. Jake Hilton will be back. Going into next season, how are you feeling? You're returning most offensive players, most of your defense as well. This was a team, like you mentioned, just went to the quarterfinals, arguably could make a run at a state title next season. But I want to know, at least for right now, I know you get a couple more freshmen coming in. We'll have the off season, but how are you feeling right now with your returners coming back?
We're excited about it, but again, everything is contingent upon getting better. That's what we talk about. We don't talk about a goal of this, that, or the other. We talk about being the best we're capable of becoming. With the guys we have back, I think the best we're capable of becoming could be a very good team. But again, I hate to keep bringing coach cliches in there, but Nick Saban talks about the rat poison being people telling you how good you are. And my dad used to tell me as well, just remember, son, a pat on the back is only 18 inches away from a kick in the pants. So that's something that we're going to have to really guard against. That's an easy thing to do. Start telling yourself how good you are, and then you don't get any better. And that's the key for us, is to try to get better. If we get better, I like our chances to be a pretty tough team. But if you watched our games, it wasn't like we blew anybody out of the water, really, outside of maybe one game or so. We have to do things right, and we have to play the game the right way and do good things in the kicking game and those type of things to give ourselves a chance to win. And that's one of the things I like most about our team, is our kids enjoy the process and enjoy getting better. And hopefully if they buy into that, they can make the same improvements this last senior class did.
Again, we were speaking with Prescott High School football coach Cody Collett. Coach, just got a couple questions here before we let you go. First and foremost, Jackson Rice. We mentioned him earlier in the interview. Sophomore quarterback, came in to fill in the role for Alex Vaughn when Vaughn went down during that Bradshaw game during the regular season. Where does he fit in the offense this upcoming season, considering you will be getting Vaughn back for his senior year?
Well, it's a great issue to have. That's not an issue. That's a blessing. We have two very, very capable quarterbacks that are both really high quality players. Both have really good skill sets. Alex can run the ball a little bit more. Jackson is extremely accurate throwing the football and does a great job So it's a great issue to have two guys to be able to play that. And it gives us the ability to move some around because they're both, anytime you're coaching, you're trying to get your best 11 athletes on the field. And they are two of our better athletes as well. So we're definitely excited about that opportunity and can kind of get some creativity going from the coaches and see what we can accomplish with that.
Coach, before we let you go, of course, I do want to ask the JV team was able to win a game this season. Who can you expect to see coming up at the varsity level, and what's the plan for the offseason?
That's one of the things I'm proud of our program able to do too. We always try to field 3 levels, and most schools in 4A field 2 levels now. One of the reasons we field 3 is we had a ton of juniors. Our JV was actually some sophomores and a number of juniors that were playing for the first time. And one of the things I like about that is you give those kids an opportunity to play football because you can't get better standing there and not playing. So there's a couple kids on that team, Coulter Fenn and Tristan Huddleston, are kids that had never played before and came out this year. And both of them, by the end, you're going, wow, they can play football a little bit now. So those are just 2 of the guys off that JV that will actually be seniors in a fairly big senior class. And there's a couple other sophomores. McCray Cassoon ended up starting. He started on the JV and then he ended up starting on the varsity by the end of the year. Court Lewis, Jed Rummage, Wyatt Rewerts. There's some good players in that class that we're excited about. And we'll always, if we can, try to field 3 levels just because I think it's more opportunities for kids to play. And again, not necessarily worried about the result at that level, worried about giving kids the opportunity to get on the field and try to improve themselves.
Well, Coach, again, congratulations on finishing the season. I know it was an absolute wild one for you, but we're happy to see you back down the sidelines and back coaching again. And we look forward to speaking with you when we get closer to the start of football season.
I always look forward to talking to you. Thanks for all you do in your coverage of high school sports in Northern Arizona and the Grand Canyon region specifically. We really, really appreciate it.
Anytime, Coach. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Coconino High School girls basketball coach Cassie Schrader, talking a little basketball here on Off the Bench. Stay with us.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Cottonwood Parks and Recreation and Gettle's High Desert Mechanical. I am joined now by Coconino High School girls basketball coach Cassie Schrader. Coach Schrader, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you for having me again.
Well, we're always happy to have you, Coach. You're rocking the Valley Oop shirt today, supporting the Phoenix Suns as they get done with their what is it, like 17-game winning streak at this point right now on December 1st. So solid season 17. For the Suns, and an even better season for you last year in your first year coaching the program. The Panthers finished their season with an 11-3 record. They did earn a trip to the playoffs. Coach, just kind of give me an overview of that year. It was your first year coaching the program. How did you feel? What did you learn? Where have you improved? And coming into this season, how did the offseason look?
Yeah, last year I was very lucky with, my personnel. Honestly, I inherited some amazing kids from the previous coach and they adapted perfectly well. They had, one coach for 3 years and then their senior year they just changed it up and they responded super, super well. I really didn't change the system very much because obviously I was very familiar with the system. Mm-hmm. And, it worked for him and it continued to work for us last year. And they did seem to trust me. They went into every single game without any fear. They were just thankful to play. because it was almost compromised. So I just think that they were thankful to play, and they highly impressed me. And I'm very I'm thankful for how easy they made my job look, honestly. In terms of, the off season, I tried to hold as many workouts that meant the weight room, that meant, open gyms as possible. We were in there 4 times a week, usually 2 days in the weight room, 2 days in the gym. I tried to do it pretty much every single week. I gave them like a couple of weeks break here and there. I've been trying to make the weight room a little bit more of a priority for them, because I think it's important, especially because with my personnel this year, we're kind of little. So we got to make sure that we keep the strength up, do lots of injury prevention type stuff. And I'm very senior heavy again this year.
Okay.
So, and these are kids that I've had since they were freshmen. I coached them on the freshman team, the 9-10 team. So now I have 7 or 8 seniors right now, and they've all been with me. So they all, they trust me. They definitely trust me. They know me. They know how I work. I'm familiar with them. So I feel like that's my advantage this year. Definitely different personnel, but I feel like I have a little bit of a different advantage this year. So that'll be nice.
Coach, what about an evaluation on yourself? I mean, how did you feel you did, kind of like you mentioned, it's your first year coaching the varsity program. You've obviously been with the Coconino Panthers for a little bit. You take over for Coach Reyes last season. Where did you learn? Where did you fail? Where are you looking to make improvements this year?
With COVID being such a big thing last year, there was a lot of stuff we weren't allowed to do. Tournaments, there was a lot of fundraising strains, options were kind of limited. So honestly, where I know that I need to improve is the administrative side of things. And that's always the part that no one tells you about. Whenever, if you say you want to be a varsity coach, no one's like, oh, make sure that you take care of fundraising, you take care of parents doing this and this. It's just, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes with the job. So that stuff I'm definitely learning along the way. It's not easy. The basketball part is easy. All that other stuff is just extra. It's something else, but I'm thankful because this year we do have enough for 3 teams. So we have a freshman, a JV, and a varsity, which we did not have last year. And we had a very small JV team that went undefeated, but there was only 7 or 8 of them. And now we have 10 on each team at least. So numbers are up. So that leaves room for me to improve on, looking long-term, building a program, making sure, certain girls stick together on their team so they can move up together and, come to me when it's time for them to be on varsity. So there's just a whole lot of stuff that I'm still learning along the way, because last year I the basketball part was easy and we definitely got it done. So
yeah, very much so. Again, the Panthers are coming off an 11-3 season. The season has already kicked off. We'll talk about those first 2 games of the season in just a little bit. But, Coach, you talk about the JV program going undefeated last year, and you talk about sort of looking forward. When building your roster, you mentioned wanting to keep maybe a couple kids together because, okay, they're sophomores this year, but next season they're going to be juniors. We're going to need them. I mean, what factors do you consider when you're building your team?
So this year, I considered what I previously said, keeping the younger girls kind of where they're at together so that they can kind of move in, basically blobs to me. And, I think keeping them together is a really big piece. I'm hoping so. This is the kind of trial and error part of coaching. This feels like my first year sometimes because of that stuff. But this year I was very just making each team cohesive. So from freshman to JV to varsity, all the varsity girls love each other. All the JV girls, they play really well together. They just won their first game yesterday. Freshmen they won't have a game until Monday. So we'll see how that goes. It's just kind of keeping them together. And I kept some seniors this year that weren't with me last year because of COVID or, whatever else. So I kept them because they were coming to workouts, they were improving, and I wanted to reward them. I have 2 sophomores that were on JV last year on varsity now. They're 2 guards, Aubrey Laughter and Kaylin Lee. They're coming up. So they've been highly impressing me the past couple games, even in our scrimmage and practices. And their basketball IQ as sophomores is I'm super impressed with them. So I'm really happy. I'm definitely happy to have them up this year. So for me, it was just kind of keeping everybody cohesive from the lower levels up to varsity.
No, and that's great, Coach. I mean, you talk about, it feeling like your first year. And in all honesty, it kind of is. I mean, last year was just so hectic with COVID, and it was, masks, no masks. There were some games that were canceled. There were some that weren't. And now this season, you get an opportunity to have that freshman team. You get that JV team back. They're coming off an undefeated season. You're reloading the varsity team with players from the JV levels last year, some new players this season. I mean, you got to be coming into this season feeling confident. I do want to ask, before we go into the first two games, what goals do you have for the program this year and just kind of going forward?
I just want to stay, Coconino has the reputation of kind of being towards the top right there with Flag High every year in the region. And I just want to make sure we stay competitive. And that is going to come with a little bit more teaching on my end, a lot more teaching points, because the IQ of my team, the basketball IQ of my team this year isn't quite as high just as a group this year, which is fine. Like I said, that just means it's more teaching opportunities for me. They have to learn how to stay disciplined in their offense because, like I said, personnel wise, we're really small. We're very guard heavy. We still like to run. Which I want to continue to do throughout the entire program from freshman on. But, I have a really, really amazing freshman, a really amazing JV coach. Like, they were with me last year. They were doing JV together. So I'm pretty confident in, what they can do with their newer girls this year. There's some freshmen up on JV this year. That really impressed me as well. Excited to have them. Even the sophomores that I kept on JV this year, I'm very excited to have them for their junior and senior year too. Like, they just all, again, that was another one of those reasons why I wanted to keep them together. So like I said, I just want to, all across the board, I just want to stay competitive in the region, regardless of the level.
Well, Coach, it's good. Excuse me. It's good you mentioned your two JV coaches. I remember us talking last year. You had some very high regards for them as well. When Mingus got an opportunity to take on Coconino, I saw the JV team, and they do really operate well underneath those two coaches for you at the JV level. So it seems like the development there is really, really strong. And you're just going to be reaping the benefits of it, Coach. I mean, you guys welcome in a whole bunch of players this year. You mentioned it, and they're going into a solid JV program that is looking to continue to improve and get ready for that varsity competition. Again, we are speaking with Coconino High School girls basketball coach Cassie Schrader. The Panthers have completed 2 games so far this season. They kicked off their season against Notre Dame Prep. Coach, can we talk about that first game?
So it was funny because, sorry, not funny. Notre Dame's bus broke down 15 minutes out of town. So we were supposed to start at 5:30. We started at 6:15. So we were all nice and warmed up, and I felt kind of bad because one of our buses had to go pick them up and bring them to the gym. So in my mind, it was like, all right, let's use that to our advantage a little bit. I'm not going to lie, which we did in the first half. The first half, it was just everything was kind of going our way. They weren't hitting shots. We were running our offense really smoothly. And then my point guard, Winter Husky, went down with some early foul trouble. And that was kind of where we broke down. And that was just like a huge learning experience for the rest of them, where, when somebody like that, our main ball handler, goes down like that, for like a whole quarter, almost, like somebody has to step up and take care of the ball and be the floor general for her. So like I said, just a really good learning experience. We did end up losing by about 12 or 13. We just kind of broke down when we shouldn't have. But I think that they learned from that going into last night's game too. So they kind of wanted to come back with a vengeance after that one, because I feel like we could have taken that first one, but Notre Dame just started hitting shots. They kind of spread the floor in the third quarter, and they slowed down the tempo. They controlled the tempo, and that was to our disadvantage, definitely.
Well, talking about that follow-up game you mentioned, of course, you guys take on Tempe. A little bit better of a game there for the Panthers. Can you take us through that one?
Yeah, of course. we came in there, we were the first ones in the gym. There was not a single soul in the gym. Like Tempe wasn't even in there warming up or anything. So, I was just kind of like, all right, let's get warming up. Let's, we have to keep the energy up. And that's been one of my emphases since last year. Like energy's got to stay up on the bench, in the locker room, everything. So that was a really big thing for both JV and varsity last night. But we just came out guns blazing. Like we were running immediately. I had them in a man full court press. They couldn't handle it. And luckily we capitalized on every single possible opportunity. We played really, really nice help side defense. It was a good opportunity for us to develop there as well. But it just went much smoother. They were a little more confident. I think they just needed a game under their belt, and it went our way for sure.
Well, and it definitely helps. Of course, you mentioned sort of it's unfortunate that Notre Dame Prep's bus had to slow down, which, you talk about your team was already pretty much ready to go and they have to wait an extra 15 minutes. Of course, not to blame anybody for it. It's, things happen, of course, but you're right. I think having that first game to just kind of get the rust off, get the cobwebs off, just get kind of back to that in-game tempo definitely probably helped you guys out a lot in that win against Tempe. On Monday, December 6th, you've got a great matchup against Lee Williams, followed by a matchup on Tuesday, December 7th against Prescott. This is the first time that these teams are going to be seeing region opponents this year. How are you feeling going into those matchups against the Volunteers and the Badgers, respectively?
So going into that, these next few days of practice are vital because we've obviously learned a lot from our first two games. Lee Williams was super tough last year. I think we only won by 4 our first time playing them. Second time, we may have only won by like 10 or 12. They're super well coached. They're very disciplined. Offensively, they're super disciplined. They throw a 1-3-1 in there, which you really don't see very often in high school girls basketball, which I love. And it was, we had a hard time breaking that last year. So, I just expect them to be super disciplined and, well coached, just like they were last year. We are definitely going to be smaller than them this year. We might have matched up a little better last year, but they got some height on them. So that's probably going to be the one disadvantage that I'm a little more worried about. As for Prescott, they always come up and give us a great game. We always go down there, give them a great game. Prescott's one of those ones where I like to play them because they come in nothing to lose and they play really hard regardless. But those two games are going to be vital for us to start off with wins in the region. And like I said, these next, 4 days of practice are going to be super important leading up to that, because then we have a tournament next weekend in Flag at the Pepsi tournament. So it's a long week.
Yeah, I'd love to go into that a little bit, Coach, because you've got an interesting opponent in that Pepsi holiday tournament, which is coming up on December 9th. You face 2A Sedona. Of course, Coconino battles out of the 4A. Sedona battles out of the 2A. Of course, smaller schools in terms of the size has nothing to do with the talent on either team. But I want to ask, this is, I believe, looking at the schedule, it's the first time that you've faced a lower opponent than 3A. How are you feeling going into this matchup against Sedona? I mean, obviously they're no slouch. They were undefeated last year. They lost in overtime in the championship game in 2A. But how do you approach kind of these tournament games in general? And what are you expecting from the Scorpions in that tournament game?
When I went to NPA, which was 1A when I was in high school. So I grew up playing smaller schools, at a smaller school like that. And now that I've been coaching at a 4A school, it's really not that different, to be honest. Like the competition is still solid all across the board, 1A, 2A, 3A, no matter what, like the competition is solid, especially they went undefeated last season. They're coming in to play a 4A team in a tournament. They have absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So, they obviously, their coach obviously knows what they're doing, uses their personnel to their strengths clearly. That's, I try to tell the girls, no matter who we face, it's like, or no matter even who catches the ball on offense, you respect every single girl that catches the ball. Close her out just as she, just as you would the best player on Bradshaw Mountain or Flag High. Like it does, like, just respect them no matter what. We don't go in with any, we got this kind of mentality. It's not worth it. That's not that's not what I like to condone character wise. So that's big. That's big. That's a bigger than basketball thing too. So I'm not, it's not that I'm worried, and it's not that I'm not worried. It's just another game that we have to approach with, as much confidence as possible, but also with just as much respect as possible.
Well, of course, and not taking any opponent lightly, which is what you're saying. I mean, I totally agree. I think any day of the week, and I've had this conversation more with the softball teams, because I feel like, a sport like football, it's pretty difficult for a 2A team to beat like a 4A team just because of the size and the roster size. But with these sports where it's a little bit smaller in terms of the roster on the floor, basketball's got 5, there are 9 on a softball field. So I feel like you can get these games where it doesn't really matter what the size of your school is. I mean, a 2A could beat a 6A at any time, right, and 4A could beat 3. I mean, it's what makes it a lot of fun.
Oh, definitely. It's like that, like you said, football, it's kind of hard, but with basketball, definitely, you just never know. You could come across a 4 or 5A team as a 4A team that just is struggling, and you could see a 2A team that looks a lot better than them. You just never know. And that's why basketball is so exciting. It's you just have to prepare accordingly, regardless of who you're playing. So,
well, Coach Schrader, congratulations on your first year last year, and we look forward to continuing the rest of this season. Like I mentioned, the Panthers' next game will be on December 6th as they take on Lee Williams. That game will be followed up with a game on December 7th against Prescott. Coach Schrader, it is always great to speak with you, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me again.
Of course. When we come back, we'll take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Chino Valley High School girls soccer coach Alan Foster, and we will talk about the new 2A state champion Cougars right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Gettles High Desert Mechanical and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Chino Valley High School girls soccer coach Alan Foster. Coach Foster, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, we're very happy to have you. Congratulations, first and foremost, to you and your program. The Cougars finished the 2021 season with a 2A state title after beating number 1 seed Northland Prep. Not the first time that they had to face off against the Spartans. Of course, if you want to go back not too far ago, you guys were facing them not only in the championship, but also this season, having to face them 2 times in the regular season, splitting that series matchup. Coach, can we just go into the state championship so I can stop my rambling? I mean, how are you feeling going into that one? And can you just take us through that game?
Yeah, no, we felt really good going in. We were going in as the 2 seed, but we felt like we were the 1 seed. Like you said, we had split with them. The game we had lost at their place, we were missing our, the core of our offense. It was 28 degrees and snowing. And so we knew that game wasn't indicative of how we thought we could play them. And so we went in with confidence. We had a great week of practice going into it. We went out there and played our game plan to a T. We dominated the game from start to finish. It's always fun to play Northland Prep. We didn't want to play anybody else in the final, so I'm glad it was them because we finally got over that hurdle. But like I say, the girls showed up and they executed the plan perfectly from start to finish.
Coach, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that rivalry between you and Northland Prep. It seems like, at least for the past few seasons, it's either been Northland Prep versus Chino Valley in the championship, or the one instance where it was Northland Prep and I believe St. John's they took on. But, Coach, you come into this season facing off a team you're very familiar with. This is your second state title with the program. I mean, how does it feel to kind of, you talk about it, take over that hurdle, beat the Spartans? I mean, can you tell me a little bit about how that rivalry's grown for you and your relationship with Coach Blair?
Yeah, no, like I said, we appreciate the good competition. And, if it was any other 5-year, 6-year stretch, we'd probably be 5-time state champions. And the two teams you see at the top right now, since I've been coaching, I think this is my 11th year, 10th year, but they're by far the two best teams that I've seen in our division and hands down. And it's actually elevated the level of play because now a lot of these White Mountains teams, I mean, they used to be the powerhouse. They've actually picked it up and it was a lot more even this year. In years past, it was two teams standing out from everybody, but we love a challenge. Mike's got a pretty good grasp over there on the Flagstaff girls. He's able to pull from a pretty large city. He works at a school that allows people to come there and isn't necessarily a public school. And so he's got a leg up on us and I appreciate what he gets to do over there. And he does a good job with it. We've actually played together in the off season. Some of my girls have gone there and played club soccer with those girls. They've made friendships. But when it comes time to step on the pitch, there's no friends, man. It's a great rivalry, and it's one that we're glad to be on the top end of this year.
Yeah, very much so, Coach. I mean, like you said, that rivalry is not necessarily one of those crosstown rivalries you see with like Coconino and Flagstaff, or you could argue Chino Valley and maybe like Prescott or Bradshaw. I know you guys have a couple teams down there. They're different sections, of course, but right. It's interesting. You guys have sort of built up this rivalry throughout the past couple seasons. And like you said, it just makes for great soccer. And you guys have a great relationship between the two programs. There's really no animosity. It's just more good competition. And that's always fun. And like you said, those White Mountain teams, I believe it was Snowflake who was in the tournament, correct? As one of those White Mountain teams?
Yeah, Sholo, Snowflake,
yeah.
Blue Ridge. They're all St. John's. They're all really good, man. And year in, year out, I work over here. That's where I am right now as we're talking. That sports here is king, and that's not like it in Chino. Chino, we have to actually go out and recruit and get girls to come out for soccer. And but there's been a change in the power, and it's runs through Flagstaff and Chino Valley now, and it's actually a cool thing.
Yeah, no, very much so, Coach. And taking a look at your roster, you graduate 6 seniors this year, including your second and third leading scorers, Madison Foster, your daughter, and Sabrina Lopez. They both big contributions for that senior class. Coach, what else can you say about the senior class, their contributions this season? Obviously, finishing this year with a state championship. A lot of these girls were unfortunately a part of some of those state championship losses to Northland Prep. So it's got to be good for you to send them off with a championship against that rival team. So what can you say about the senior class?
Yeah, great class. They're the crop. When I first started coaching, down at the AYSO level and the club level, this was the group I started with. And so especially Maddie and Sabrina, they've been our leaders all growing up on our club teams. And so they're two people that I really wanted to get a title for because they've done everything that I've asked of them. They were my captains this year. Madison was player of the year for our division. And they both earned every bit of it. And so, last year there's a couple girls that got away without ever getting to see a state title. They made it to the finals, and that really bummed me out. But I wouldn't have felt good about myself if Madison and Sabrina didn't get a ring after this year, because they've done everything you're supposed to for the last 10 years. And they led the right way. They did it in the classroom. They did it outside of the classroom. They did it on the field. And talking about them being our second and third leading scorers, they led you take away their assists. There wasn't very many assists outside of those two. And so they're very unselfish players. And it wasn't just those two, though. I mean, they were the key to our offense in the middle of the field, but we had a lot of good role players too that played in there. And so we had Bella Morris, who was injured. We had a transfer player that moved from Prescott Valley, and Bryn Preston that started at defense for us back there. We had another transfer player that moved up from Southern Arizona, Yossi Navarez, and she gave us good minutes in the midfield. And so, good group of girls, but we're not losing that many. That's the great thing. We're losing 3 starters, but that midfield is tough to replace, but I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, and talking about some of those returners you're getting, Coach, you're going to return your leading scorer, Caitlin Ruskoff. She'll be back next season, along with Danielle Graham, 2 players who really contributed for you. Who else are you looking forward to getting back next year?
Defensively, and that's where I think titles are won is defense. And that's where I thought we've been beat in the past is not having a shutdown defense. This year's offense was lights out, good, and the best in the state, best I've ever coached by far. But the difference maker was our defense stepped up this year, and it was led by Mariah Morgan. She was a first team all conference defender. We had Delynn Bannon back there that bounced back and forth when London Wigan was hurt. And she's probably, our best defender, but we didn't have her for most of the season. We got her back just in time for the playoffs, and that made a huge difference. But they're all juniors, and our team is junior heavy. I haven't done the head count, but we've got at least 10 juniors, and the majority of our starting team is juniors. And so we're not going to be hurt next year. It's going to be tough to replace those midfielders because all them goals that our forwards are scoring, they start in the midfield, and it's a great thing to have. And so that's tough to replace. But we're going to actually replace them with one of our youngins, a freshman that came in this year, Mari Holiday. She's a heck of a midfielder, and she's gonna have to really step up and play big to help replace Maddie and Sabrina. Danielle Graham, you talked about her. Yep. She came in and made a huge impact as a freshman last year. This year as a sophomore, she started off kind of quiet, and she hit her stride right at the right time, the playoffs. And we knew we were going to need that because teams started double teaming Madison. They started double teaming Caitlin. And I've been telling them all year long that was going to happen. And that's how I would play us if I was playing us. And we weren't getting that play throughout most of the season. Just in time for the playoffs, Danielle finally took it on her shoulders and said, if you're not going to cover me, or if you're only going to cover me with one person, I'm going to make you pay. And she did a great job at that.
Well, and that kind of explains the assist numbers, Coach. You talked about it with Madison and Sabrina, those two having those assist numbers. Of course, when they get double teamed, they're passing the ball off and giving other players opportunities. Speaking in terms of the defensive side, goalie Shay Daniels, who is your starting goalie for a good portion of the year, she'll be back next season. How are you looking to continue her development? She'll be a senior next year.
Yeah, she came up big, man. She made a couple really big saves. One in particular in the state championships, when it was a 0-0 tie, one-on-one, she came out and made a great save. And so she steps up big time when it's needed. But we've got another great keeper, freshman that didn't get near as much playing time. But if you looked, at stats, she had a lower goal against ratio, and she's great in the goal. And she got plenty of time because we were up big in a lot of those games. But, when it comes down to it, we played Shay back there when we needed because we had confidence in her, and she's older, more mature. But we look to have a two-headed monster back there next year, too, because they're both great keepers. And we need offense from both those girls, too. We're losing some offense, and both of them are really good out on the field, too. And so we're going to move forward just like we did this year. Shay's going to start for us in the goal. And Lily's going to find herself playing, probably starting in the field. And then we'll rotate them out to keep them both healthy and fresh, because we're going to need Lily after Shay graduates, too. And she needs that time and experience.
And what a benefit to you, Coach. You bring Lily Klein in. Of course, she was a freshman this year. She'll be a sophomore next season. She'll be looking to take over the starting role her junior and senior years. And she'll already have pretty much 4 years of varsity play under her belt by the time she's a senior. Like I said, just what a great benefit for your program. Like you mentioned, with Shay becoming a senior next season, then bringing in Lily Klein. So, where does Lily fit in right now with Shay kind of taking a majority of the time at goalie?
It's going to be a 50-50 split, I believe. And we had the same problem, when we won our first state championship. We had a senior goalkeeper, and we had a freshman. And the freshman, Casey Matthews, was the best keeper that's ever come through Chino Valley. And she just hadn't quite matured yet. But when we got to the state championships, I made a change the last, 15 minutes of the game, and I moved Casey Matthews in there, and she came up with 2 big saves to win us the state title. And I've got that kind of faith in Lily too. And so they'll go 50-50 split, but like I say, maturity plays a lot. Lily hasn't quite matured there. She doesn't play with the confidence, quick twitch, natural reaction. She's really gifted in the goal. But there's a lot to be said about having been there and done that. And Shay plays that spot really good. But I also see we're going to need her in the field next year, too, with losing some of this offense.
Well, you talk about losing some of that offense, Coach. Your JV program, however, a little bit of crop of players you'll be able to pull up from there. They went 5-2 this season. Who are you looking to bring up from those lower levels?
We stole a big, tall volleyball player. And we like good athletes. And we got Bailey Perkins that was leading the way kind of down there with our JV. She floated. She played some varsity for us this year. She'll come up and make a big impact. But, we got enough girls coming back. It's going to be really tough for some of those JV girls to break into that lineup for next year. The following year, yeah, but they still got a year of development. But
Right.
there's probably 2 or 3 they're going to make varsity, but it's going to be tough to find playing time with as many returners as we got.
So you talk about kind of many of those returners you're bringing back. I mean, you're going to have to make some tough decisions with some players who might be ready for the varsity level, but may not necessarily have that position open. So I want to ask, when making that decision, Coach, next season, when you're building this roster, I mean, what do you kind of take into consideration when you've got a crop of players who I could bring them up right now if I wanted to, but I got a couple players here that might fill those roles a little bit better. Where's your mindset regarding building that team?
Well, they kind of separate themselves in the offseason. And I like say, if I've got good players that don't play in the offseason, they'll make the team. I don't tell them you can't make the team if you don't play in the offseason, but we run year round. And so we'll have a club season during the summer. We're in the weight room every morning. We're out on the field twice a week, and you'll start to see those girls separate themselves. So those girls that I'm talking about that are on the fence, just getting that many touches on the ball. And if you look at our athletes, we look athletic. When we step on the field, we're like 2 parents out there talking about how beautiful their kids are, but we're talking about how athletic our kids look, and we like nudge each other and say, man, we look way more athletic than this team. And it's because they put the time in the weight room. Yeah. We do speed and agility training, and so those JV girls, that's where they separate themselves. And if it's a toss-up, I do lean towards the girl that's been the commitment and effort and show me they want to be part of the team.
Right.
I don't punish anybody that plays other sports, because I like that as much too. And being from a small school, you need multi-sport athletes.
Yeah, and being from that small school, you kind of have no choice but to share a lot of kids within programs. Like you mentioned, you brought in a volleyball player, obviously. That particular player obviously shares time on the hardwood as well. But, Coach, kind of looking forward into next season, you mentioned the plan for the offseason, which is going to be, keep training, keep getting the weight room and run some club soccer as well. What about 2022 coming into next year? I know we just got done with this season, but I mean, where would you like to see this program continue to grow? What goals do you have for yourself? You've already won 2 state titles now. I mean, where do you go from here going into next year?
Well, like I say, I've been being told I'm silly for not leaving while I'm on top. And with my daughter's graduating, all my kids are out of the house. But this junior class, when I talked about that group that I started with, this junior class was part of them. And so I've really had every intention of sticking it out for at least another year to be with them. But like I said, the state is more even. And so next year is going to be a fun year, because it's not just a 2-team race. Sholo has made all the leaps and bounds that they needed to make. St. John's is still just a powerhouse. Blue Ridge has returned to power. They used to be the dominant team. They're back there again. And even the teams that were perennial, dwelling in the cellar, those teams are actually getting better. Payson's getting way better. They're doing things in the off season. Snowflake's always a good school. So we're going to continue to work hard. And we know we're going to have a target on our back next year. We do know that it's still probably going to be a battle between Northland and Chino. But also knowing that all those other teams are looking to knock us off. And that we got a little complacent 2 years ago when we got beat by St. John's in the semis. And that was a great wake-up call for us. We're going to have to keep that same kind of humility, and because every team's going to be gunning for us this year.
Again, we were speaking with Chino Valley High School girls soccer coach Alan Foster. The Cougars wrapped up a 2A state title this season, beating Northland Prep. Coach, we talked about it when we first started the interview, just kind of the rivalry between you guys and Northland Prep, but you mentioned the talent just within the area. You mentioned, obviously, the White Mountain teams are really starting to come out and compete very, very well. These are teams you'd face in your out-of-region games. But let's talk about the region, Coach. I mean, like we said, you had to face Northland Prep 3 times this season, twice in the regular season and once in the championship. That's a tough battle. You've got a bunch of other talented teams within the region. Can we just talk about the talent you're seeing, not only in the 2A Central, but also just within the entire 2A as well? Yeah.
No, like say, people knock on the 2A. It's really not 2A, it's 3A. And but it's 2A because we play in the fall and they got to give it a number. But all the schools that are playing it, those are all 3A teams. And I coach wrestling too. And, even in our own school, I get athletes and coaches saying, man, we'd love to be in the 2A. Well, the 2A isn't Blue Ridge, Sholo. It's just a title we've been given. And if you look at a team like Page, last year they left because they had to shut down because of COVID. So they bumped up and played in the winter, and they made the playoffs. And so, and I've talked to the Page coach and the AD, and they'll be the first ones to tell you that the 2A fall is a much tougher competition than what they moved up to play. The difference is we just don't have the depth of teams. And so, our top tier teams, our top 6 to 8 teams could certainly compete at the next division up, maybe in the next 2 divisions up. But outside of there, then there is a big drop off. I mentioned teams like Payson that are making that change though to get in that mix. But there's no easy games. And I was talking about how I work over here. The difference between the White Mountains and the rest of the state, you see every field filled at night with athletes and parents. The parents are so involved here, coaching their kids. And if you open up a newspaper, that's what's in the front page. It's not what's going on in the world and all this nonsense that you have to read in the bad news. You see how local teams are faring. We don't have that over in our neck of the woods. It's a lifestyle over here. And that's why you see programs like Snowflake just dominating in every sport. And so I would challenge any team that knocks the 2A fall a double dog dare you to come over and try to play in it. It is tough duty. And I would love to play in the winter, but against those teams, it's just too dang cold. I don't know how they do it. I go watch Prescott and Bradshaw, and we play those teams in the off season. I wouldn't dare play in the winter because it's not conducive to soccer. It's really not. But I'm not going to say it's the toughest division because your Division 5 and Division 6 schools, they're hands down totally different. My daughter plays college soccer. Everybody on her team, has come from those big schools. I see the skill set that they come in with. I go watch those teams play in the off season, and it's a difference. But the 2A, I would put it up against 3A, and I'm not going to say we're better in 4A because we don't have the depth. But Chino Valley and Northland for the last 5 years would have been in the top end of the playoffs every year.
I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this weekend. Of course, I'd like to thank 2A state title champion, Chino Valley girls soccer coach, Alan Foster. Coach Foster, thank you very much for coming on the show. We look forward to talking with you again, and best of luck with wrestling season.
Hey, I sure appreciate it. Appreciate what you do, giving these kids recognition.
Of course. That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Katafama, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.